What the hell? Why are there two Joseph Causeys?
Joey, I can see you. I can see you. Shut up.
We said it at the same time. Hey, coach.
Hey,
EJ.
you guys just bear with me 1 second. There's one thing I wanted to make a quick copy of before I got started today. First of all, that.
Coach.
Yes, sir.
Roth and Hector were asking to be let in.
Okay. Tell them to chill out. All right, that's not working the way I wanted it to. All right, let's just go ahead and get started then. How we doing today?
Good.
Good. Looks like everybody's in. Yeah, there's. I don't see Hector. Oh, there's Hector. Do we have everybody today? It looks like we're missing people. All right. So a couple things. Well, one, how was y'all's break? Anything worth noting? Any highlights?
So around playing video games.
What's that, Panotes?
Play video games and basketball.
Video games and basketball. That's the move, huh? That's the quarantine move. Video games and basketball.
Planting trees.
Planting trees. What kinds of trees?
So a little gem magnolia and like 2 crepe myrtles.
Okay. Very nice. Was Arbor Day over the break, or are you just planting trees just because of the heck of it?
My mom wanted to plant trees, so.
That's a good time for yard work anyway. Nick Land, what do you have in the background?
This is a punching dummy.
It's a what?
It's a punching dummy. I'm in a new room now. This is like this is my room. It's my punching dummy.
Does he have a tie on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you like him to look nice while you're beating the tar out of him.
Yep.
Okay. You have a lot of aggression that you need to take out, Nick Land? Is that just
Yeah. When I'm gaming, I got this so I don't punch other things. 'Cause I get angry.
you're like my brother?
Yeah.
All right. Luke Franco. Any big events over the course of your spring break?
No,
What's
sir.
what's the go-to quarantine activity?
Video games?
That's it, huh?
Hmm.
What about like outside
Basketball, I guess.
basketball? Fair enough. Anybody golfing? Am I doing a little bit of golfing? Connor, Reed, where do you go?
Sycamore or Honey Hawk.
Sycamore or Hunting Hawk? And they're both open. Are they crowded?
When I went there, both pretty crowded, but it wasn't that bad
Yeah.
because we went early in the morning, so we're the first ones off. Anyway,
Nice. Connor Murphy, what about you? Can't hear you, Connor.
I go to Stonehenge.
Stonehenge.
Yeah.
That's not a public course, though, is it?
No.
You got to be we're not all like Mr. Moneybags over here, Connor Murphy. We can't all belong to the country club.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all good. I'll find another place. I'll have to go to Hunting Hawk with Reed. What you drinking there, Luke?
just some water.
Oh, good.
Gotta stay hydrated.
That's discipline. Okay, so a couple things. One, I think we talked about Zoom bombing last time, maybe. I can't remember, but either way, after 10 o'clock sharp, I can't let you guys, anybody extra into the class, okay? As a matter of policy, okay? So if you're coming in at 10:02, sorry, Gasparini, I would have to kick you out, okay? Today, it's okay, but it can't be later next time. It's not the end of the world because you can always see the YouTube video after the fact. Let's see. We also have a test. That test is coming up at the end of this week. We will finish going over all of World War I on Wednesday, and I'll make that test available to you in the afternoon on Wednesday to go ahead and take it. It won't be the same as last time. I'm using one of those test taking websites for you guys to take it. It will be time limited, and it will be under the assumption that you've studied for it. So, typically take-home tests or true open book tests take a longer period of time to take them because you got to flip through, type stuff in, flip through, type stuff in. This isn't going to be like that. So you're going to, if you go into it thinking that you don't have to study and that it's open book, well, it is, but I think you're going to run out of time. Does that make sense? You've got to know the material ahead of time in order to take this test. Also, and please do write this down. Access a World War I map, okay, to figure out who is allied with who, and because there are going to be questions on the test that talk about alliances and that requires some knowledge of a World War I map. There's one in your textbook, and there's a million of them online, but you are going to have to know the basic alliances. Hector.
How long is the test going to be, and how long do we get to? How much time do we have?
So I'm gonna make it to where it should take a class period. I'm shooting for 40 minutes. There will be multiple choice questions. There will be short answer questions. it'll be very similar to the other tests we've taken in this class. But like I said, it's not the type of thing that, even though it is technically open notes, you're just not gonna have the time if you make it a true open notes test. Cannon?
Do you have the map on class documents?
I think there is a map on class documents to come to think about it, because on that packet of maps I put on class documents, you know what I'm talking about? You access that, yeah, that map's actually perfect. Okay, so that being said, I've got a warm-up question for you guys. And does anybody need the link again for the warm-ups? A couple of you who got in late might. I'll put it up there just in case. There it is. And we will go straight to the warm-up question. All right, so this is our last unit on World War I. We're doing a 10.4, and the question is as follows. How might this conflict have gotten its nickname? Meaning, World War I is often referred to as the war to end all wars. What might cause us to think about it that way? Okay, as the war to end all wars, what might that nickname mean? And without knowing anything about World War I, what might that nickname say about the war itself? So think about that. Think about how you might answer that, and go from there.
Coach Walker,
Yes, sir.
my warm up is like being really slow, so I think
That's
I might
okay.
just have to wait a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be the same type of thing. I mean, if you need to completely put it in later, you can.
Okay.
Everybody getting on that document at once, I think, slows it down a little bit. All right, and so in a second, I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms, and I want you to discuss your answer with the person and just kind of fill in the gaps, figure out what they said that you might not have said, and vice versa. And then we'll come back together and discuss the answers in full. So let's go. Joseph, you got a working camera. It's good to see you. Joseph, you need to join your breakout room. Joseph. Hey.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, my apologies, sir. I'm using two computers.
Oh, so you're in the breakout room.
Yes, sir. I have the one that I talked through here, and then the webcam one is the one that you're currently looking at.
Okay, how's your breakout room going?
Good, sir. I'm with Elias and Chase Bruce.
I see that. Okay, cool. Here we go. All right, who would like to share some of what you guys discussed? Just kind of give me a synopsis, what you think the war to end all wars meant, what you think it means, some of what your group discussed. Just go ahead, unmute yourself, and speak up. Charles, go ahead.
So we discussed that there was a lot of technology that was introduced, like gas and tanks, flamethrowers, and other things that weren't like very ethical. And I feel like after the war, that kind of ended inhumane like war tactics. Well, flamethrowers were used throughout World War II, but things like gas and a lot of other things were
So
well regulated after.
why might
war.
those weapons be kind of symbolic of the war to end all wars?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah. Why might those weapons lead us to call World War I the war to end all wars?
Well, we also discussed that so wars before then were more romantic, and this and World War I was much more brutal. So that was displayed through casualties, and you could definitely tell that these war tactics were inhumane because of the immense casualties that each side suffered, I guess.
Okay. Other thoughts? Nick Hanley, who were you with?
Ben.
Okay, what did you guys say?
Is that way about the first one or second?
Either question.
All right. That the war, it got the name because, like, most people thought it was the most violent war possible.
But why the war to end all wars? Why that?
Because a lot of people and countries were involved.
Okay. Ben Marks, anything to add?
We also said that like it was fought over like a ton of like rivalries, like old rivalries, like Germany and France, or like Austria-Hungary and Serbia, and so it was just a ton of different countries involved. That it was just like a war that would end all those rivalries.
Okay, that this would be this would decide things once and for all. Okay. Other thoughts? Somebody who hasn't gone yet. Let's see. Gasparini, what did you guys talk about?
I said
Who were you with?
I was with Hector,
Okay.
but I said that that there were a lot of countries involved, but also that a lot of traditional views of the world kind of like went away with this war. So it was kind of the war that ended like monarchies and stuff like that, kind of like bring them into a new age or something like that.
Okay, kind of to go along with what
Yeah.
was mentioned earlier about war being romantic and this old idea of what war was all about. Charles, go ahead. One thought.
Although that the war was kind of like a continuum of like past wars, I think that World War One kind of led up, or other wars kind of led up to this final conflict.
Yeah, well, something like the Franco-Prussian War was a clear lead up. Hector and then Jackson Mann.
I said it was the war to end all wars because the shape that it left the world in was terrible, and people thought that the world could not get any worse because of the amount of wars that people went through. So people thought that, well, this might be the end. The world can't get any worse than this, but they were wrong.
Yeah. Jackson. Jackson. Jackson Mann. I'm not so sure his audio is working too good. Let's see. Anyone else? Okay, Jackson, go.
Oh, me and Roth, we said that it was like such a big and gruesome war that people didn't happen again. That people were like, scarred from it, didn't want anything else like it.
That they didn't want to have anything like it. They didn't want, it to be. And I think that really kind of catches what it's all about. We've gotten to the end of discussing it really, and at this point, it's going to be about stopping it all together. That this was so bad that it just needs to be that we can't have anything like this again. So good. Any other thoughts? Good. So what we'll do is, I think, if I'm remembering right, we hadn't quite finished that last section of notes from the previous unit. So we're going to move backwards a little bit to wrap that one up before we get to discussing the Treaty of Versailles and all that good stuff. So allow me for a second to roll this back here. What was the last slide you guys had gotten down?
War technology, I think.
War technology. It's got to be something after that.
Russia withdrawal.
Russia withdrawals. Did we get through Russia withdrawals? Did you guys get all that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So that means that we should be on the very last slide, which is here. Let's talk about Germany's last. They've got one shot. Who had entered the war that was going to make it impossible for Germany to really win, to win once they had actually physically gotten troops on the ground?
America.
United States.
The United States. The United States entered the war. That was going to make it impossible for Germany to win. So they had this crucial window of time in which they had to kind of burst through and take Paris. If they took Paris, then they might very well end up winning, but they had one shot to do it. Why were they hopeful? What had recently happened that kind of played in Germany's favor?
Russia pulling out.
Yeah, Russia leaving the conflict. They weren't going to be in anymore. And so what did that allow Germany to do, Jackson? If Russia's
they moved from the Eastern Front to the Western Front.
Yes, to move from the Eastern Front so they could take, it was about 600,000 men, which, after they were tired and they'd been fighting Russia, but they could take all of those men now and move them to the Western Front to try to have one last shot at taking out France and Great Britain at the same time. So what is this going to look like? They're all going to go after what they see as one weak point in the British line, and it was a weaker point. The forces were a little bit spread out in this one area, and so they make a push there. And to be fair, they do get within about 50 miles of Paris. And it looks at one point that Germany is actually going to turn this around in about 2 weeks and win this war. But the problem is that the German forces are just too tired, especially once their supply lines begin to get stretched, the further they get away from Germany and the closer they get towards Paris. They're too tired. They've got no more reserves. And truth be told, the German home front is just, it's kind of lost patience with this whole situation too. The Kaiser's popularity is at an all-time low. The German people are finding that they're having to do things like the government's getting involved in taking their church bells that have hung in their churches for hundreds of years, and the government is forcefully taking them and melting them down to make weapons and war equipment and all that type of thing, because that's how desperate they are at this point in time for materials. And so this is upsetting for the German people. There are many German people who they literally, have ceremonies and funerals for their church bells before they send them on their way. Not a good situation overall. Eventually, the fresh U.S. troops end up coming in. And what happens is it's just kind of like cutting through butter. They just push Germany all the way back, or push the Germans all the way back into Germany. And before they officially go over the border, the Kaiser ends up abdicating. Before that happens, Austria-Hungary, they end up having a revolution in home. Things aren't going well for them. They kind of got their butts kicked by Serbia. They've gotten their butts kicked by the Italians. They've been fighting in the mountains and all sorts of other places, and they end up leaving. And so that means that, and not only that, but the Ottomans end up leaving. So that means it's basically Germany against the world. And Germany hangs in for a couple of weeks, but ultimately they end up having to leave as well. Reed, is that a Trump 2020 poster in the back of your room? Wow. Okay. And coupled with the Steelers helmet. I'm very excited for this draft. Dolphins are going to get Tua with the 5th overall pick. We got 2 other picks in the first round. You realize over the course of the next 2 years, we have 11 first and second round picks. I don't understand how anybody's going to beat us.
Sir, I don't think that's going to do much.
I think like we're just going to end up dominating. We've got all this wave of young talent coming in, and I'm very excited. Most of you guys are in all you guys are in 9th and 10th grade. I'm excited to just sit here and gloat in front of you guys over the course of the next 2 or 3 years about how sweet the Dolphins are. And you guys won't be able to say anything because you'd be like, yeah, the Dolphins are sweet. There's nothing I can say. Pinota, you think you can get that fan going any faster? Are you cold? I don't even understand. It's like 60 some degrees outside. You got that thing going on full blast.
I guess it's been on all night, all day. I slept with it on.
Okay. I'm all about fans any time of the year.
Zach, we left the ball.
I like sleeping when it's cold.
Okay. I'm just not a big fan of moving air. Moving air when I'm sleeping, like on my skin, bothers me.
I don't feel anything right now.
You don't?
I took a shower, so I'm kind of hot right now.
Okay. We go with this? All right. So let's get into the current. So 10.4, we're talking about the aftermath between this class and next class. We should take this out, no problem. And then you guys will be ready for your test. Test is just on World War I. Aftermath. So the war has not officially ended. The war has technically ended because there's no more fighting. There's been an armistice that has been signed. An armistice is, does anybody know what an armistice is? What is an armistice?
Like a truce?
Yeah, a truce, like a ceasefire. And they're saying, and so they've signed this armistice, and the reason they've done it is so that they have time to now sign a treaty in order to officially end the war. Okay, so that's what has to happen now. We're going to talk about briefly what are called the 14 points. 14 points were come up with. The United States has not been a big player to this point, even in the war. They helped, to be sure, they helped in the war, but we haven't so much talked about the United States. Who's president of the United States during this time?
Woodrow Wilson.
Wilson, thank you, Hector. So Woodrow Wilson's doing his homework. Woodrow Wilson's coming up with a plan. This is how we're going to stop this for good. So what I want to do is I want to take a quick look at these 14 points. You don't have to write them down, but I do want to talk about them, and there's a few of them you're going to have to write down. But let's see. Hold on a second. I got to change this. That's not going to fly. Oops. There we go. All right. So, Nick Hanley, would you read the first one for me, please?
Open covenants of peace openly arrived at.
All right, what does that mean? Let's take it one bit at a time. Open, what's a covenant?
Like I don't know how to describe it.
Somebody help him out. What's a covenant?
Promise with God.
Go ahead, Joseph.
A promise.
A promise. Okay, we talk about, in religious circles, we'll talk about God's covenant with Abraham, right? So a covenant meaning a promise of peace. So a promise between two countries, what is that essentially?
Truce.
A truce or a treaty. A treaty of peace openly arrived at, okay? Openly arrived at, as opposed to one that's kind of secret. How did secret treaties end up making World War I so bad? How do we talk about that playing out? Connor?
It made like other countries join because they said they wouldn't be allied with like another country in case of war.
Yeah, what was the one event that caused World War I to happen?
Just like the murder of the Archduke or whatever in Serbia, or not Serbia, in Bosnia or whatever?
Well, it was in Serbia. It was who was the in the Duke was Austro-Hungarian. So technically, Connor, who should this war have been between?
Austria and Serbia.
Austria and Serbia. But what kind of caused it to involve all these countries?
The treaties they had with each other.
Right, the treaties they had. So, what Woodrow Wilson is saying is, hey, open covenants is going to mean that everyone's aware of who's allied with other countries, and we don't have all these secret agreements that end up causing things to just explode. How about the next one? Ben Marks, would you read that for me, please?
Freedom of the seas and peace and war.
Freedom of the seas and peace and war. DJ, what does that mean?
That you can use the seas for whatever you want, whether it be like fishing or like swimming.
Okay, well, they're not so much concerned with fishing and swimming. I mean, that might be cool for you, DJ, but in terms of different countries, what is so at a certain distance from the ocean, who owns that? From the shoreline?
No one.
No one. What is it? What do we call it?
International waters or something.
International waters, right? And so I think at this point in time, it is 22 kilometers from any shoreline anywhere in the world. That is international waters, and that's about 13.8 miles. So you get past 13.8 miles from the shore, you're in international waters. That's the way it is today. And so what was the problem in World War I that caused, why would they have made this? Why would they have caused this to be one of their big points? Why would Woodrow Wilson have wanted to include this? Chase Bruce.
It had some impacts on trading, I guess.
Okay, so it disrupted trading. What did the Germans do that was especially disruptive?
They authorized submarine warfare.
Yeah, unrestricted submarine warfare, which meant you couldn't go in international waters and really feel safe. Let's move down a little bit. Let's look at the rest of, here's a pretty straightforward one. Reduction of armaments. Elias Breeden, what is that?
Like they have to like reduce the amount of weapons they have, so like they don't have like such huge amounts of like military weapons on hand at any moment.
Yeah. And then Sketch Boy sitting there in the dark, Henry Jeffries. What can we say about number 0.8? What is that all about?
Because weren't they fighting over Alsace-Lorraine?
Well, that was a big reason why who hated who.
France hated Germany and vice versa.
Yeah, because Germany had taken it during the Franco-Prussian War. So that was an attempt at least to fix that. And then you've got all these territorial adjustments down here. But all these together, and including one that didn't quite make it on the page, was were the 14 points. All right, so let's take a closer look at the 14 points that I want you to be aware of. So there's Wilson right there. There's the Palace of Versailles. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson is going to outline these points. He's going to do his homework ahead of time. He's going to take them to the European countries and say, hey, listen, if you want this to be the war to end all wars, this is how you're going to have to change things. No secret treaties, we mentioned that. Freedom of the seas, mentioned that as well. Free trade kind of goes along with freedom of the seas. And then reduction of arms. Self-determination, which all those ones involving all the different countries at the bottom, this kind of gets to that point. Essentially, it means that if people in a certain area want to create their own country, or they don't want to belong to a imperial power, then they have the right to decide on their own government. So, for example, the Ottoman Empire had lots of territory in lots of different places, not just Turkey. And the whole argument was that the people living within the boundary of the Ottoman Empire or the old Ottoman Empire should have a right to decide where they want to go. And then the biggest one is going to be the League of Nations. League of Nations, this shouldn't be a foreign term to you, and it should sound like something we have today at this point in time. Let's see. Who knows what the League of Nations is kind of like today, the modern equivalent? Go ahead, Gasparini.
The UN.
Yeah, the United Nations. And what is the United Nations, Matthew?
It's like a coalition of like a lot of nations that like they kind of like all have representatives and they all really know. I don't really know like the in-depth part, but I know
Yeah, that's fine. What do you? Can you give me an idea? Can you give us an idea of the overall goal? I mean, what does the United Nations seek to achieve?
world peace.
Yeah,
Kind of just keeping
yeah.
things normal.
And so, what better way to make sure that this is the end of the war to end all wars than than create this League of Nations who see events like what happened in World War I, see it happening ahead of time, and they come to discuss things together and figure out how to solve them before they become a real problem. So Woodrow Wilson had all of these points, and he ends up leaving. He leaves D.C. to go to Paris, becoming the first U.S. president ever to leave the United States while he's in office to go to another country to negotiate terms. All right. So let's talk about the treaty itself. First of all, it's held at Versailles. Okay. Pinotti, what's the significance of Versailles?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Alright, it's the Palace Versailles. It's the Palace Versailles in Paris.
Yeah, so historically, we've talked about Versailles before.
It's the most let's say beautiful palace in the world.
Yeah, and it was the political center for France. Who built the Palace of Versailles? Do you remember, Pinotes?
Louis XIV.
Louis XIV, our Sun King. Okay, so it was the perfect place they saw to kind of hold this peace conference and discuss this situation. So the big three, we're gonna call them Clemenceau, Lloyd George. Clemenceau is going to be the Prime Minister of France, Lloyd George, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and then Wilson, obviously, as we said, the President of the United States. Those are going to be the three biggest, the three most influential people in deciding, how the terms of the treaty are decided. So it's important to note that none of the defeated countries were given a voice at the conference. So not Germany, not Austria-Hungary, and even some countries on the winning side, okay, were not given either a voice or maybe only played a limited role in things. What was a country that was on the winning side that kind of got the short end of the stick?
Japan.
Japan certainly was that. Yeah, that's a good one. We haven't discussed so much that front, but there was fighting that took place out there. Who else was on that side? Italy. Limited role. They were on the winning side, but they weren't given much of a voice. And so what other country that was actually a pretty big deal in terms of fighting was also got the short end of the stick?
Russia.
Russia. And why was that?
They dropped out early.
They dropped out. And if you drop out, the rationale is that you're really not a winner, right? That you didn't earn your just desserts. And so this is going to create quite a bit of resentment, not just amongst the losing countries, but against the countries who won, but just didn't get the types of things that the other countries got. So Italy was given a seat, but they weren't given nearly what they wanted. They wanted territory. They were not given very much. But all the countries loved Wilson's vision for the League of Nations. The difference between them and Woodrow Wilson was they wanted harsh terms for Germany. They wanted Germany to pay, right? And what country is really going to want is basically going to be out for blood?
France.
France. This happened on their soil. It destroyed hundreds of square miles of land, lots of people killed. This was devastating to France. And what kind of added salt to the wound was that really no fighting took place on German soil. There was lots of German soldiers that died, obviously, but Germany surrendered really by the time the front had been pushed into Germany itself. So France says they need to pay hard. And Wilson's like, hey, we got to tone it down a little bit. We can't be but so hard on them. The treaty ends up being signed into place. So Germany wasn't even given a seat in this. Now, I'm going to ask you guys to think back a little bit. So we used an example, I think when we were discussing the Congress of Vienna. And we said, I think we used the example of Sam Saunders breaking the rules of the baseball team, right? You guys remember what I'm talking about? What conclusions did we reach in terms of how harsh to be on Sam Saunders?
Not to be harsh at all. Well, be kind of harsh, but not too harsh.
Find a middle road, yes? What was the danger, DJ, in being too harsh?
They may revolt and want to have less,
I think I'm losing you a little bit, DJ. The audio is not coming through, but you were on the right track. It's going to create that legacy of bitterness, isn't it? There's going to be people who end up becoming bitter about what happens to, about not just German citizens, but German leadership. The Congress of Vienna, in what way was the Congress of Vienna, who were they considering punishing, if you remember, in the Congress of Vienna? Hector?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Were you listening?
Uh,
Okay, who were they considering punishing? All right, somebody who is listening. Go ahead, Henry Jeffries.
Germany.
No, in the Congress of Vienna.
France.
Who is the naughty country that was on the, yeah, France, because of the whole situation with Napoleon, right? And so did they give France a seat at the table?
No.
Actually, they did. France wasn't going to get much of a say, and there were going to be punishments, but they weren't going to divide up Germany or France as a country. So the Congress of Vienna was successful but the Treaty of Versailles was not in that regard, in that there's going to be really harsh punishments that are going to be levied on Germany because of what they've done. And we're going to see, starting with next class, how that plays out. What sort of punishments are levied and how bad it ends up getting, okay? All right, so that is all I have for you guys. You're welcome to go. One other thing. I'm going to be sending out interims. I don't think that affects too many people in this class, but just know that teachers should be sending out interims later this week. All right. See you guys.
All right.
Thank
Coach.
you.
See you, coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Coach, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we have any like homework or anything we need to do? Or we
No homework this week. We're going to, of course, that test is coming up, so I might review some of the material. And then I'll make that a test available to you Wednesday afternoon.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right.
See ya.
Did you go back to that last slide really quick? I just need to take a really quick picture of it.
There you go.
Thank you.